All right, so we pick up in section 8, which is the disassembly procedure or sequence for this engine, which is what we'll be closely following as we go through this process. So you can see the first step is to disconnect the spark plug. Not asking you to take the spark plug out, not removing the spark plug, we're just disconnecting the spark plug. So if you go to the front of the engine, this is a spark plug boot, or the lead boot. We just pull that off of the end of the spark plug so that there's no way this engine can start. You can see the end of the spark plug there. So the spark plug is now disconnected. There's no way this engine can start. The second would be to empty the fuel. You want to make sure that the engine is completely dry of fuel and oil, and so we would drain the fuel. This is the fuel tank. The fuel cap would be here. I removed it. So you drain out of the tank here by turning the engine over, or if you didn't want to do that, you could also remove the fuel line from the bottom of the tank. This is the line that goes from the tank over to the carburetor. This engine is brand new, just out of the box, so there's no need for us to drain it today. There's no fuel, never been fuel in it, unless maybe they test ran it. The next would be to drain the oil. Again, this engine's brand new, so it doesn't have oil, but there's two ways that you could drain oil if need be. So one would be to drain out of the dipstick tube. This is the dipstick tube here. This is where we'd fill the engine with oil. So again, you could take the engine, turn it over, and drain out of here. The other way is that there's a plug on the bottom of the engine. You'd pull that plug, and it's going to drain out the bottom. Pulling the plug on the bottom is the way that most of our students choose to do it when we're in class. So we've disconnected the spark plug, we've emptied out fuel and oil. Now we're going to start disassembly. The first step would be to remove the engine cover insert. You can see a picture of the engine cover insert here. It helps protect the rewind starter. Now I've loosened all the fasteners for today just to save time. So this is the engine cover insert. It's held on by 4 Torx head screws. So these are the screws that hold the engine cover insert on, and they're a Torx head, which kind of looks like a star. The next step, once you take the engine cover insert off, is to remove the engine cover itself. And the engine cover is held on by 3 hex flange nuts, and those are 10 millimeter. What you're going to find as you continue to do work on engine powered equipment, a lot of metric is used. In fact, most of the time your fasteners are going to be metric. So you can see those 3 flange nuts here. Again, they're 10 millimeter. I did loosen them, so we would take those off. And once you have those removed, you're going to be able to not only take the engine cover off, but a few other parts as well. So this is the engine cover. Helps protect the engine from mechanical damage. Underneath the engine cover is the rewind starter. So this engine is a manual start, a pull start. It doesn't have an electric starter like you'd find on your vehicle. And so when we pull that rope, it pushes those wings out. You see those 2 wings? Those 2 wings pop out, and they grab inside what's called the drive cup or the flywheel cup. And when they grab, they'll pull that engine over. You can see it move a little bit there. And then the last part under here is the blower housing. These engines are air cooled. That's the only way the engine cools itself off, is through cool air. And that cool air is generated from the flywheel fan. So as the flywheel spins, again, it's spinning at several thousand revolutions per minute. It's spinning, it's creating cool air, and the air is being dispersed across the engine surfaces. The blower housing helps keep that cold air near the engine. If it wasn't for the blower housing, that cool air would just expand and leave this space. So a very important part is the blower housing. So if we go back over to our manual, there's a few things we've accomplished here. We took off the engine cover. We took off the recoil or rewind starter. And we removed the blower housing. Now, one pet peeve of mine is that we always reinstall fasteners. So I took off these 3 hex flange 10mm nuts. I'm going to put them on back where they came from once I take the parts off. In this case of the engine cover insert, I took out these 4 torque screws. I'm going to put them right back where I got them. Why is that important? It's important so that we don't lose fasteners. And as you start the process of reassembling the engine, you know exactly where each fastener goes. If you just take all the bolts and all the screws and all the nuts off and you put them in a bucket, you go back to put the engine back together and you might be pretty confused about where it all goes. So put it right back where it came from once you take the parts off. The next step is we're going to remove the muffler assembly. Now the muffler serves a few purposes. Number one, as the name implies, it muffles sound generated from the engine. But the muffler also prevents sparks from flying out of the engine or fire, which would be a fire hazard. And it also creates a little back pressure in the engine, which helps sustain combustion and sustain compression, which is very, very important, as we will soon come to learn. So we'll be taking off 2 parts. The first is the muffler guard. The muffler guard helps protect the muffler from mechanical damage. So this is the muffler guard, and this is the muffler itself. Again, I would take these 2 hexagonal flange nuts, which are also 10mm. I would say 85% of the fasteners on this engine are 10mm. And I'd put those fasteners right back on. So that's where we're going to stop today. So just to review, we took off the engine cover insert, which helps protect the recoil starter. We took off the engine cover, which helps protect the entire engine. We took off the recoil starter, which turns the engine over for starting. We took off the blower housing, which keeps cold air close to the engine. We took off the muffler guard, which protects the muffler, and we took off the muffler, which muffles sound, prevents fire, and creates back pressure in the engine.